this month's topic, we're going to do a different topic every month. This one's going to be about pursuing a career in business development, and a bit about recruitment in there. And I've asked a couple of people to be on a sort of panel with me, and I'm going to put a few questions to them and explore their own journeys of being in BD. So I've got Stephanie Kiens, who's Business Development Director at Lewis Moberly. So yeah,
hey,
hi Stephanie.
nice to see everyone.
Good to see you. Janita, who's Head of New Business at Ketchum. Hi Janita. And also Jennifer Prince, who's Business Development Manager at Fifth Ring. Have we got Jennifer? There you are. Great. So perfect. So I guess I'm going to put the questions to them. So maybe everyone else sort of goes on mute for this section. And then what we're going to do is the sessions always break out into breakout rooms. So I'll put you all into sort of rooms where you can go off and discuss some of the topics that we're going to debate now, and then come back together to sort of conclude and round up. Great. So the first thing, so yes, Stephanie, Janita, Jennifer, hi. I'll go to, we'll just start with Stephanie first of all, because you're first on the list. Just tell us briefly, how did you get into business development? You know, how did you sort of evolve into this space?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I've been having this type of conversation with a couple of people lately because I remember when I was at university doing my master's in marketing. At the time, I actually found marketing really boring, but doing strategy as well. Never knew there was something that was called business development. And it was only when I got into working with a company called TerraCycle, which some of you may have heard of, especially with the Loop program launching within the UK within the past month. I was the Nordic marketing manager there, setting up kind of partnerships with larger FMCG companies on creating these partnerships for the large waste collection services, but also very much setting up partnerships with NGOs. So you have the blue flag schools and green flag schools and the beach cleanup, stuff like that, where I found that it was actually within cultivating, creating value out of those relationships and those conversations that I actually enjoyed my job even more. So, and then I was recruited to work within my first creative agency, a design agency called Blue Marlin, if some of you may know that. And that's where I kind of dedicated my whole time to business development. And I guess, yeah, because I've enjoyed a little bit of an international upbringing. Despite my accent, I'm not American, but I am half Danish, half Swedish, but I lived in the States when I was very young, so it's just stuck. And my half-sister is half Portuguese, so, you know, come round to my place, it's like the UN. But but I think in that way, and I also had, you know, the great opportunity to study with a host of very international students and alumni from all over the world. And I think that allowed me a better understanding of kind of diverse ways of thinking, diverse ways of coming at a problem and thinking about different solutions to it. So I think all of those little things have kind of created my kind of ability to take on new business. But I mean, I started my career working for the Danish shipping company Maersk, doing risk management for the oil trading department. So you could say I've kind of veered off in a very different way now.
Yeah, so it certainly doesn't sound like it was planned, and
not at all.
I guess giving you a real insight to different cultures and probably helps you manage multiple different people, personalities, and which is, I guess, at the heart.
If anyone has ever had any interaction with any type of trader, you'll know they can be quite kind of cowboys when they're not good at kind of following direction, and they don't like being told if they're doing something wrong. So that's
that appeals to all of us in different ways. So Janita, come to you. And in terms of, did you set out with a career in mind in BD, or not, as most find it?
No, not at all. So I left university with an English degree, with no real clue as to what I wanted to do career-wise. And I spent the first year, much to my parents' disappointment, I spent the first year just working in retail, just to get just to earn some money and really have a look at what I really wanted to do. And then a friend of mine was working in a PR agency called Coleman Getty, who specialise in publishing. They did like World Book Week, a very small niche agency in Tottenham Court Road back at that time. And they were offering internships. So she asked if it was just something that I would consider. And I did. So I did a 3-month internship there. And really just got a feel for what it was like working in a PR agency. I loved the vibe and the culture. The specific sector or focus for them really wasn't something for me, but there was certainly something within those 3 months that made me think, this is something that I could certainly pursue. And then as a result of that, I applied for just various junior roles, all in PR. So at that time, business development really wasn't even on my radar. And then started off as a TA, so a team assistant, working at Lexus PR, so working on their consumer accounts, all the Unilever beauty products. So worked as a TA up to account executive, and then moved to another agency, another smaller agency specialising in food and drink, called Richmond Towers. And it was actually there that the CEO, I think within the first year or so, he asked me if I would be interested in with growth across the agency. So essentially, because they were a very small team and very reliant on, back in those days, in going to events and really just a lot of proactive outreach and relationship building, he said, look, just given, you seem, very personable, journalists obviously have a good relationship with you. How do you feel about, doing more prospecting and doing a 50-50, so client facing and some business development? And I said, absolutely. And it was that moment for me that I realized how much I loved it and enjoyed it. And then from there, I was headhunted to come to Ketchum and do BD full time.
Okay, great. So it kind of again came into it quite late in your career.
Very late. Very late.
It's interesting how this, and that's why I guess I'm kind of interested in exploring into that. BD doesn't seem to be a career path, and so I don't know with you, Jennifer, did you grow up always thinking I'm going to be in BD, or was there someone who inspired you, someone like Janita? Did you have someone who saw those skill sets in you and give you the opportunity?
No, I just got bored. So I was an analyst at a pet chems price reporting agency, and it started off as a small company of about 200 people around the world. That's small for a Texan. And then we got acquired by a company called IHS Markit today. Then it was just IHS. And we became this much, much larger beast. They sort of made us fit into these boxes and holes. And anyway, being an analyst got boring. There was a sales position that was open, and I said, oh, that seems fun. That seems like that's going to give my life some variety and some interesting things to do. I'll talk to people. And I knew the products because I'd been working on them as an analyst for about 5 years. So I moved to sales, and I was very good at it. That was 2014. So I was the top salesperson on my team out of the gate. My manager was really influential in that. And then, I think a lot of large corporations, leadership changes happen. They say, let's restructure everybody, let's move things around. At the same time, 2015 was also a very bad year for oil. This larger organization had not just pet chems, but oil and automotive and all these other verticals. So their response was to lay off a lot of people. And since I was the newest sales team member, I got let go. So I moved to another company doing kind of the same thing, but now on a larger scale. Now I'm not just selling pet chem data, I'm selling oil and gas data, I'm selling metals data, biofuels data. That went well for a few years. And then energy reared its ugly head again. I got laid off again. And so I kept finding sales roles because I was so good at it out of the gate. But I just sort of thought it would be fun because being an analyst had gotten so boring.
So on that then, what do you think makes a good salesperson? You know, what drew you to it, and what do you think you need?
I think I was really comfortable doing it because I had an understanding of the product. I knew what I was selling was very important to people. Price reporting agencies sell data that companies, traders, use to buy and sell commodities every single day, or to plan their forecasts and their budgets. And so it's just, I knew I was providing a service, so I felt comfortable because I knew the product so well. So I think it takes a lot of research and understanding of who your client is and what your product is. I think it takes a certain amount of tenacity and sort of a hunter mindset, which I am. I'm an ambitious person. And I would say it takes some curiosity. And you have to know how to listen. I think that's really, really key. You just have to listen to what's being said and what's not being said, because those are often two different things.
Yeah, all sounds good. So, Stephanie, I'll just come to you then in terms of a BD person. You know, what do you think makes a great BD person?
Well, I was nodding along to you, Jennifer. I would say, and so funny how maybe we've crossed paths. And I think Janita, I think when I was working for Richemont, we were using Ketchum for PR analysis or something like that. So anyway, small world sometimes. But Jennifer, I totally agree. You have to be constantly curious. I always say I am, kind of persistent, but just before the point of obnoxious. So I mean, some of my funniest stories is when I had, I got in touch with a client 6 years ago, and I finally converted that business when I was at another place last year. And it's just, knowing how to kind of stay in there, at least leave a good impression, because then at least whenever, you go somewhere else, you say, oh, do you remember we had this chat and whatever. And I actually recently had the loveliest email back from someone who said, of course I remember you. How are you? And, it's just, I think if you're not pushy, and if you just understand that there's more to sales than just the numbers, it really is about relationships. And as Jennifer, you're saying, kind of understanding what's not being said. And that comes from a very unique understanding of who are you speaking to? What are their business challenges? What are their goals? What do they, I say to anyone who wants to kind of start reading annual reports. That is your best key into knowing what people's goals are. What are they going to be judged upon at the end of their quarter, year, their review? How can you help them get there? If you can be a part of someone's success, that's the best way of ensuring that they want to hang on to you, obviously. But yeah, constantly curious, I think. I read a lot every day. So.
It's great. Yeah, and we see that all the time, when we're looking at insights or how we're going to be approaching companies. It comes down to the insights, right? And the research and the understanding you've got. That, we're all pissed off with generic sales messages. Yeah. So is everyone we're reaching out to. And the real thing that sets us apart, a good one from a bad one, is just the person who's taken the time to actually understand that company or that person and tailor it, right?
I also think, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, you can't tell someone in this industry something new about their industry. Surely they know everything. They're way too busy. Of course you can share something new with them, or do something interesting as create a cross-category reference. Is there something else happening in another industry with the right amount of insight and foresight that can be applied to an industry? I remember, what was this? I remember how we took what was happening in the, bathroom sprays, so home perfumes or whatever they call it, took that and applied it to the soft drinks category, because it was all about how are they communicating about those new sense, and how are they communicating about, it's not, you're not really communicating about masking the odor, but, creating a wellness or a sense of, a new environment within your home or whatever. So there's a lot of fun parallels and ways you can kind of use information in one category to inform and make your insights within another category more interesting.
And that's wearing a creative hat at the same time as a sales hat, right? So Janita, I'll come to you then in terms of, what else, have you got anything to add there in terms of skills that you've had to draw upon or you've seen really imperative in a good BD person?
I mean, I think the two key qualities I would say, I absolutely agree with Jennifer. Listening is absolutely key. Listening to what the prospect is telling you or not telling you, and really going beyond the brief in terms of really what is the wider issue or solution that they're seeking. And the other thing I would say is just collaboration is absolutely key. So for me, I work across in London, really 3 communities. So there's healthcare, corporate reputation, and consumer brand. So on any given day, you are working with different people, different levels, different personalities. So really just understanding and, being collaborative with them, I think is absolutely key.
And just then in terms of getting the best out of BD people, do you have a team, Janita? Or do you hire any, or have you hired BD people?
It's changed quite a lot. So it's gone. There've been times when it's just been myself. It's got to a point now, I would say over the last 18 months or so, that we have had to, or at least I've felt the need to certainly increase the team, as it were. Simply just there's been we've had more marketing and awards kind of come into my remit as well. So it's really needed 2 people. There was actually 3. So I had someone on a freelance basis, and I'm always really looking out for people, good writers, or just people with BD experience to help us on an ad hoc basis. But I recently hired a new business manager who's come from Nelson Bustock. So she joined us. She joined, the first day was the first day that we were in lockdown. So she hasn't actually met anyone physically, but she's joined 3 months ago. So at the moment it's myself and her, and we have a European counterpart who's also London based. So between the 3 of us, we work very closely together.
So when you were looking for that person, what was kind of top of your agenda in terms of skills and
I would say for me, so I've interviewed a lot of BD people, and I think the challenge we've had is there is that, I guess, a blurred line between a BD person with PR experience and someone with sales experience. And I think one of the challenges I'd say I've had with recruiters is I'll look at CVs and they're of great salespeople. And for me, my prerequisite for this particular role was that they had to be someone who had enough experience already of understanding, how to put a credentials together, how to complete an RFI, all the kind of, I say basics, but all the kind of understanding of, I guess, terminology and understanding of what it is to kind of triage an opportunity and at least have that knowledge. So I'll be honest and say I wasn't looking for someone who was necessarily in a junior role for this role. We were really looking for someone with coming from an agency with experience. But I would say it's definitely been challenging. It's been very difficult to find a good BD person. I mean, we've hired people previously, I would say over the last 2 years, that just haven't worked out. It's like from a slightly junior role, but it just for us hasn't been, I guess, the right fit from a kind of chemistry and understanding of what the role requires.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess different sales roles are, so different, I guess. And
yeah.
So Jennifer, with you, I guess you talked about, yourself and being ambitious and understanding the sectors and the markets that you've worked within. I don't know if you've ever had to hire somebody, but firstly, have you hired anybody, and what would you sort of look for to try and, replicate yourself, or, is there something else to it?
No, I haven't hired anyone, but I've been hired several times because of my, roller coaster of a career with the energy market. But I think what it takes to hire a good salesperson or a good business development person is really an understanding of what the company is. At this point in my career, I think I can do a better evaluation than I did many years ago when I just got bored. But kind of like Stephanie said, looking at those annual reports and understanding what's important to the company is important for the salesperson. So I think it is sort of incumbent on ourselves to look at who an organization really is, numbers wise. That's going to drive a lot of the decision making at the company. And then you get a sense of the culture at the company, you get a sense of the people that you'll be working under, the management that you'll be working under, and really make sure you find the right fit between what you know you can bring and what the organization has to offer. I don't think anybody can do that well out of the gate in business development or sales, because you don't know what your sales skill set is. I don't think there is a sales school of study in the United States. I know there's a few masters of sales somewhere around here, but there's no opportunity for anybody that comes to sales in the US, I don't believe, to study it. So you have to do it and figure out what part of sales is really your niche. Do you like prospecting, or do you like business development and growing accounts and nurturing relationships more? So I would say the salesperson has to know who it is they're going to be working for. And then that manager also has to do the research, but the salesperson kind of has to come to the table knowing that it's a good fit first.
Which can take time. You're right. There's no set way of doing something, and everyone's different. So it's tough, out there. But like in terms of getting the most out of you, then like how do you motivate, Jennifer Prince, or are you just like a self-starter? Like what? That motivation, or like and that management, and that leadership?
Yeah, with that analyst mindset of mine, I like data and I like research and I like understanding why an organization is doing what it's doing. I think what motivates me is when I know I'm working for someone who has a deeper understanding of what's driving a business or an industry. And I'm saying things that might seem very intuitive, but I've experienced not having management that understands the broader picture, because it's all about the short-term sale instead of the long-term relationship. So I think that's what's required. It's understanding what are we doing, how are we impacting markets, how are we impacting industries with what we have to offer as a company, and then finding a person who fits that puzzle piece very well. At Fifth Ring, we have business development managers in all the regions. So I'm in the Americas. One of my counterparts is on the call. Leanne is in Aberdeen, and we also have a counterpart in Singapore. And we all come to the table with very different skill sets. I have a very salesy background, but Leanne's background is more PR focused because that was a better fit for Fifth Ring in Aberdeen. And Sue is a master networker. I mean, I could ping Sue right now. What is it, 7 p.m. And I'd say, Sue, do you know somebody at ABC Co? And she'd say, yeah, call this guy. So I don't know how she does it, but she's very good at that. And those different skill sets work well in each of the respective regions. So I hope I answered your question. I think.
Yeah, no, that was great. I think like you talked about a vision, a positioning, which so many companies they jump into business development and sales without actually thinking, well, where are we going and why are we going there? And like, what's the direction? And yeah, again, interesting looking at different skill sets in the sales or business development arena. I think it's such a diverse role where we wear so many hats, and I think it's interesting. Like, I think some people don't know how to hire us, or they don't know what they're getting because, like you said, we don't know what we're good at, or they don't know what they need, and then they're trying to put like a square peg in a round hole, and it's like not quite gelling. So Stephanie, with you then, like just kind of how do you get the best out of BD people? I don't know if you've managed a team or hired in the past, and if not, maybe it's about you and how people get the best out of you.
Yeah, sure. The most of the times I've actually, so not directly hired, but identified people within our team, especially now during this, kind of difficult time. We've been very, very fortuitous to not have to furlough anyone. But instead of having to do that, then I've been looking at how can we use the resources we have in-house that, they don't have specific tasks to do, you know, that are very office based? How can we kind of redirect that energy and that time to somewhere else? And I think it's giving people the opportunity. And, you know, as a BD person, I think you recognize good BD people. You also definitely recognize not very good BD people. Sorry to say, but you definitely recognize, you know, when someone has that kind of, you know, as Jennifer's saying, that analytical way of thinking, or kind of really digging into a problem and kind of connecting different dots, or like, you know, Janita, you're saying like how the people you hire in have to kind of fit different kind of profiles within, if it's either, you know, within PR or however you kind of identify, and things kind of, you know, you can see something in someone and then you think, okay, well, let's give them a little bit more time maybe to hone in on this skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for everyone to do in any line of work, is really to see what are the younger, maybe more junior people, what are their strengths? Because I mean, I didn't know that BD was apparently my strength at the time. So I think it's really good if we can all kind of open our eyes to notice that in people earlier on, and then try to give them little tasks and challenges, and see how they kind of step up to the plate on that. How to motivate me specifically? I mean, I have been in so many weird situations. Twice, actually, I've come into a place where they had no real BD developed like activity for minimum 12 months. And as we all know, that pipeline is dead. There's no pipeline. So before you build that up, it's going to take, I mean, 12 months, if not 18 sometimes, depending on the state of the economy, etc. But I think it's the way to motivate me is I'm a very collaborative person as well. I understand the creative process, which is also why I've kind of stuck in the creative kind of agency industry. And I work really well alone, but I need to be able to kind of pull from different places. So I'm like, okay, for this, I need the creative director on board. I need my strategist to input on this. And I need to kind of have that network of resource in a way, because I mean, you're only as good as the people you work with. And I will always admit to never be, I mean, we can't all be experts in everything, which is also why one of my main philosophies is also leave your ego at the door. If you're not the right person to go to a meeting, do not go to that meeting. If there's someone else that is much better suited, leave them to do it. So yeah, I mean, the way to motivate me is basically to kind of give me free rein, but also provide me with some really valuable resource, and kind of, yeah, I don't know. I've been in situations where people feel quite, what do you call it? Kind of threatened, maybe, or they don't really want to get involved with kind of a bigger process, because they feel, oh, well, then you're taking from me. And it's like, well, no, because we're all pushing together, so you might be able to do something that's more fun. So an open mindset, I think, is the best way for me to kind of work the way I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a very roundabout way of answering that.
Very different BD people, aren't there? I think there's some people that like to be at the forefront and lead the meetings and take charge and close the deals, and then there's other people that I think I was more the person sort of behind the scenes. I like to orchestrate. I like to be that sort of cog in a clock face that was kind of like making sure all the people were working together, and it was never about the salesperson. Maybe to my detriment, but like, you know, it was always, you know, the other people, the other skills, and how you got the best out of people. And that was my approach to BD.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way of being.
we were talking, I was in with the lovely Janita, Stephanie, and Leanne. And I think that the main talking point, the one that we were talking about last was around commission and incentivized based sort of, commission structures. And some of the points that we were talking about was, when you're sort of younger going into it, depending on the type of sales that you do, because there's lots of different types of sales that one can do, hunters, farmers, management of systems, et cetera, depending on the type, and the stage at which you are at in your sales career. So the younger, to provide that focus, potentially providing them with a focus of money to hit, is kind of what is the norm. And then the older that you get, the value that you bring is actually you and your network and this and that. And then actually, sort of does the commission structure really sort of still fit with a more seasoned salesperson, again, dependent on what type of salesperson that you are. I made a point though that, it feels like it's almost expected of salespeople, specifically within agency land, which is something that I know that a lot about, because you and I are in the same sort of sphere, that commission on client wins is something that most agencies that I speak to are almost kind of like, well, we expect you to want commission for any client wins. And so it's quite interesting that it's, my experience has been that it's almost expected of a salesperson. And so therefore, even though it's not something that I necessarily care that much about from a commission perspective, it's almost expected. So that was, I suppose, wrap up there.
Yeah, cool. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, we're kind of a bit split on the kind of commission thing, because I think you should have a decent salary, but then you should also be rewarded for client wins as well. So I think as a salesperson, it's not my only motivator to have commission, but I think that should be there as a reward if you win a new piece of business, and that's how you're going to get, I don't know, I guess, earn more than other people in the company. So I think it's important, but not on a discounted salary. I think you should have both in place.
Yeah, I guess we've seen it. Go on.
Because I was the opposite on that. I was like, give me the major big salary. I'm not bothered about the commission so much. Give me the 6-figure salary, thanks very much. Because if I'm not going in the room, if I've got no control at all over who's going in the room and I'm not in the room, then I should be given only rewarded on commissions when I've got no control over anything, when the people going into the room aren't me. It's different if I've got control and I'm going into the room and I'm doing the pitching, then of course that's a different story. But in my later years in the senior roles, I wasn't going into the room. So
can I just add on that, just as a point of experience? I think maybe I'm slightly torn in between the two, because I do think that there needs to be an incentive, but then I also think that actually it's kind of like, where does it start and where does it end? So if you're not directing or having any influence on the creative, and then you bring the business in and then the creative lose the business, it's not a win. It's just it's half of a win. So it's kind of like, it doesn't necessarily always, and I think that becomes a stumbling block. In my experience, it has become a stumbling block, because then actually it turns back that it's your fault, as opposed to the fact that the creative hasn't necessarily listened.
Yeah, I think you're right, Gregory. It completely depends on the type of the sales cycle. What does that sales cycle look like? And if your organization has salespeople that are incentivized by commissions or by success fee structures or whatever it looks like, you have to be really, really clear on the upshot as to what that sales cycle looks like and what's achievable. Because if, you're incentivized to bring in new clients, but you have, you're not the only one, as Lena was talking about, you're not the only one that's involved in that sales cycle. And there's a lot of reliance upon, other people once you've made the initial part of the sale, and then it then gets handed over, but you don't get commission unless that person who's not incentivized by sales has to do a job in order for you to receive that commission. It's, it's fucked. So it's kind of like you're shooting yourself in the foot. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I've had to have that conversation a number of times around, well, what does it look like?
But in that instance, do you think you should be incentivized for getting the pitch itself? Because we have a structure where you'll get paid for like meetings and pitches, and then if it comes off, then you get like a bonus on the win as well.
Yeah, I think there's also an interesting angle to that. I'm a big believer in quality rather than quantity. And so, in that respect, if I was going to be incentivized on the amount of, I'm going to get money on the amount of pitches that I bring in, whether we win them or not, what does that say for the quality of the pitches, and are we right for the type of pitches, because it automatically sort of changes the way that you look at it, right? I'm not saying that you're only focused on quantity rather than quality. I'm just saying that when it comes to some kind of structure, all of these things need to be considered.
Yeah, I think it's about how you qualify those
meetings
and whether they fit.
I think having worked both agency side and in lead generation agencies as well, I see paying, and I agree that it depends on the person doing it, but I've seen so many people paid on meetings, shoehorning in meetings in order to get commission, with shit meetings happening and clients turning up to those meetings because they're crap, when for me, paying for meetings is driving bad behaviour. And what we're trying to do is raise the bar on BD overall. And I've just seen time and time again where if that kind of structure gets put in place, 9 times out of 10 it's driving bad behaviour. I don't necessarily, and don't get me wrong, there will be good people that will get good meetings despite that, because they're good people and they're good lead generators, and they're not driven by that, therefore they make sure that it's a good meeting no matter what. And of course there's good people that do that, and if Justin, you're probably one of those good people, but there are plenty of people that I've seen over the years. Adam, you and I have both seen that over the years, where people have had bad behaviour driven by that bad structure. And I, for one, do not think it's a good idea to put that kind of thing in place. But it's just my opinion, I'm just one of...
Some of them aren't even from booking bad meetings. They'll be like, I'll try and force a meeting for like January now. They'll be like, oh, that's fine, we'll just put it in for January. And it keeps getting shifted and shifted and shifted. But they've been paid for it, but the meeting never actually takes place. So they just put in all these meetings like, oh, we'll just put in a placeholder now. Counts for their stats. Meeting never actually happens.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Well, that's just daylight robbery. That's just theft.
Yeah.
But it is a reality of our industry, and it's part of the reason. So it's part of the reason why it's a bad perception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we there are bad practices out there, and that is why we talked a lot in our group more around kind of educating people on the different parts of sales and what's actually involved in sales, and whether it should be called BD and whether it should be called sales and that sort of thing. Is that I just think people have a different perception of that and how it should be treated. And I think, your conversation on the commission, like Lena said, it's about a cultural alignment to the organization. And I think, we when we set KPIs with clients, they're our KPIs, not ours on theirs. They're a group. We are all in this together to achieve it. And I think the biggest problem with commissions is where it becomes the solo responsibility commission on the salesperson, which becomes a bit disjointed from the organization and where they're going on and what's their involvement in that, where they kind of go off in their own tangents, or they act very sort of, like selfishly, or it's just for their own sort of cause and benefits. And that's where you start to get poor practices, poor culture.
Something that something that I did was I with my new business consultancy is that I even though I was expected by the clients that I'm going after to sort of be like, well, we kind of expect you to take a commission or be incentivized in some kind of way. I personally am not interested in taking commission on any client wins because it just gets too messy. So instead, by understanding the importance of having an incentive based sort of direction, it's that I've set a success fee model. So I milestone out within the strategies that I produce for my clients as to, this is a milestone. So 40% year-on-year growth in the first 12 months. How much value would you put on that if I could get us there? 100 grand. Great. Well, I want 5% if I can arrive us at that. Right? Is an example. So it's a performance-based, performance-driven, sort of incentive for me to show that I have skin in the game, but also gets them excited about, well, great. I mean, if he's incentivized to help us arrive at, some of these lofty goals, then that's great. Whether we get there or not is another thing, right? I hope that we do, but companies that have cultural deficiencies, in a sense that where they're every meeting is considered as a commission, that's just plain bald-faced stupidity. That just doesn't make any sense. The person who's in charge of setting that needs a reality check to turn around and go, well, listen, mate, if your salespeople are incentivized and getting commission on setting meetings that never actually fucking happen, then you're losing money, you twat, right? As far as I'm concerned, that needs to change.
Just something that I've noticed, and I think this is just coming from, again, personal experience, but I think it might be a slightly relevant. What I was talking about in our group was the idea of the perception of maybe sort of like the BD not necessarily being the creative one in the room. And if we looked at what we're talking about right now, when we talk about incentives and financial incentives, the last point that I put in the group was this idea of saying, actually, because I've worked in sort of like mid-sized, smaller agencies around kind of retail design and branding, it's the idea that actually I've gone to meetings and I've been the front person of the company. So being the front person of the company, not only am I being very, very analytical to try and get those people, but I'm also being creative enough to understand what they want. And then when I come back and I say, I've listened to this client, I understand the creative process of what they're looking for and how they want to move that creativity into something that's going to bring food on the table. This is how you do it. And then you have an account manager or you have a designer that gets upset because they're like, I can't believe you're telling us what to do. We're supposed to be the creative ones here. And so to me, therefore you might end up in a little bit of a vicious cycle, which goes back to Vinny, what you were saying about the quality over quantity. Quality to me would be having a meeting, speaking to the client, understanding the client, spending all this time researching what they are doing.
Solving their problem, right?
Solving their problem. And then coming back to the design team and saying, don't deviate. Yeah. This is the problem that they want. I'm throwing this is what I know that they're going to be, this is what they're going to really, really buy into.
Yeah.
Go with that before you go over here, before you go left field and round the corner.
Yeah.
And so there's this, so to me, when you roll it back to the incentives, that's what the incentive then becomes. It's like the overall sort of like saying, all right, now we haven't just got the meeting, we've actually secured the business, and now we've taken that person on as a client for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get that's when you get your money.
This comes back to something we talked about right at the beginning of our breakout session, which did come into the first question that we talked about being one of the challenges, is that our role, and it's something that Adam and I have talked about this many times over the years, and I know Tony and I have talked about it a lot as well, is that often business development role is not respected in the agency world. Often in the boardrooms and what have you, often is not.
Yeah, very true.
And we need to deal with this. Unless
you're going in at sort of managing director or CEO level with a business development background. If you're going in as a BDM, or even in some cases just a commercial director, it can be a very lonely role, because you're sort of playing, as Gregory was saying, this sort of in-between, go-between role, where you're kind of, you know, understanding what the client does want, and you want to come back and give the client what it is that they want. But, you know, you're not actually having to do any of the account management. So that's, you know, kind of like, that's nice in some ways, because you're kind of alleviating yourself from all the political bullshit, but you're kind of over here on no man's land, kind of having to do, kind of having to, you know, shape your own world, as it were. So
Yeah.
I completely.
Yeah, I'm going to have to wrap things up a little bit. I know a few people have had to go, and obviously the numbers are sort of diminishing. And I'm going to have to shoot shortly. Maybe we've got time for one more minute. But yeah, and look, I think all the points are great, and I think it's a healthy debate, and it's exactly why, you know, I set this group up. And I think there's a lot of education. You know, people. You know, Lucy was telling me about a story where she was in BBH and they showed her as an intern all the different divisions, but not once did they mention BD as a role or a career path. It was never even explored with her, and she loves it. You know, Gregory talked about, you know, how we're not seen as creative. Stephanie talked about how we're not seen as creative. I think it's one of the most creative roles of the business. We've got, you know, potentially seconds and minutes to win people over and give them an idea of what this agency or what this opportunity could look like. There's nothing more creative, so we're having to be creative, analytical, you know, like Jennifer said, like there's so much to it. But yeah, I think we've got, like, you know, we're going to have more discussions, and if people want to have more meetups, you know, we can do them more regularly and everything like that. Obviously, we've got the survey that'd be great for people to contribute to, and if people want to write blogs for the site, as I said, like to get some of these opinions across, then we can use it to publicize to the industry, and together I'm hoping that we can start changing some of this stuff and educating them, because it's not going to happen, you know, overnight. And yeah, I just want to thank the speakers. I know Stephanie had to jump off, but I don't know if, yeah, Janita, is still here, and Jennifer, thank you for your contributions as well. Really helpful and insightful. And if other people want to speak at the next meetup, then just drop me a note and let me know. But that's it for now.